Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another very special, as always, episode of the Hyperconscious Podcast. Today, Alan and I were lucky enough to sit down with Matt Purcell all the way from Australia. He is the author of Life Hacks for Mindful Living. He is a life coach, a professional speaker, as well as a talented musician. I will let Alan read about him because Alan likes to read.
Yes, mattpurcell.com. Matt Purcell is one of the nation's leading life coach/strategists, an accomplished musician, and one of Australia's most sought-after youth engagers. He speaks in front of 100,000 people annually and advises schools and individuals across the country with life coaching strategies and programs. We just did a rep on a Thursday evening at 8 p.m., which for him was 10 a.m.
10 a.m. in Australia. He woke up, had his coffee, and chatted with us. We were up all day. We had our coffee and chatted with him. We talked about so many different things. He is such a philosopher. He has a great mind on him, and he was so kind to share all of his tips and tricks with us.
One of the things that jumped off the page a lot in this episode was the psychology and, most importantly, the science of motivation and stuff like that. You guys are going to love this, and enjoy.
Enjoy! No. Geographically? Geographically. This is cool. So I would say make sure that pretty face is showing.
Yes, true.
They're going to want to see that fucking thing. They're going to want to see that fucking thing, Alan. That fucking face. You good? Ready? Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another very special, as always, episode of the Hyperconscious Podcast. Today, we have a guest all the way from Australia. Matt Purcell is an author of Life Hacks for Mindful Living. He's a life coach, seems to be a musician. He is basically everything. You seem to be a jack of all things positive, and we're super grateful and super happy to have you on the podcast today, Matt.
Oh, thanks, guys. It's good to be on the show. It's 10 o'clock here in the morning. What time is it over there, boys, for you right now?
Oh, it's 8 p.m.
Oh, yeah, that's great.
So 14-hour time difference, but we are still drinking coffee just like you, Matt.
Right.
Yes, we're in the same room spiritually, you know? Just
absolutely.
Dipping caffeine.
So I wanted to, like we talked about in the preamble, I want to dig into you, what made you you, and what made you choose the path that you chose. And one thing that I learned about you by going through your social media, watching your speeches and things like that, is you are super big on helping people strategize and figure out the tactical way to get from where you are to where you want to be. So we always say that, like, be the person that you needed when you were down. And I have a feeling that something might have happened to you when you were younger that made you want to kind of take this path. So do you mind sharing maybe a little bit of your childhood and maybe when you really realized that, you know, being a life coach, being a positive influence, and all those things were for you and what you wanted to do with your life?
Yeah, sure. No, that's a really great question because it's quite true. I mean, we've all got our own stories, don't we? And mine was, I guess, unique with where I grew up. I live in Newcastle, which is 2 hours north of Sydney. And I'm actually if you looked at me, if people just heard my voice, actually, they wouldn't know that I'm probably Asian looking.
Right.
To be honest with you, I don't have an accent or anything, but I'm Korean, and my sister's actually Taiwanese. And so when I was old enough to understand, I looked at myself in the mirror. And I'm like, okay, Asian eyes, Jackie Chan's son. Okay, it's good. And then I looked at my dad, and he looks dead set like Bill Clinton, like grey hair, 6'1". No Monica Lewinsky, it's okay. And then my mum is white as well, Caucasian, 5 foot something, and sweet as a pea. And I looked at myself in the mirror again. I'm just like, what the hell's going on? You guys, this isn't science. And they're like, well, we've been waiting for you to kind of bring this up naturally. And they were intentional about this and really open about why I was so different. And they told me, when I was about 4, I was adopted from Korea. And I was like, okay. And they told me how my birth mum was, like couldn't look after me. She was in a poor part of Korea, and they waited 2 or 3 years to adopt a child because they couldn't have a child naturally. And yeah, and that their son, and they're my mum and dad. That's great. I had no problem with being adopted until actually when I hit 6 years old. I was like in kindergarten, and they both sat me down, and my sister. So they adopted my sister as well. A couple of years later, her name's Kristen. She's 4 years younger than me, and we're very close. Because when we were 6 years old, I was 6 years old. My parents said, "Hey, listen, we've got to tell you some news that will change your life. Dad's leaving you." And I'm like, "Where are you going, Dad?" Like, going to the shops? I don't know what you mean. And basically unpacking, well, we're separating. We don't love each other anymore. Dad's actually got another partner. I'm like, what, business partner? Like, you've got to be specific, guys. I was pretty big smart aleck as a kid, pretty switched on with that stuff. And they're like, well, no, well, you're going to meet her. Her name is Jacqueline. And yeah, that's going to be Dad's new girlfriend. There's a lot to process. I hate you both. I really didn't like what was going on, because after that, I saw my dad once a fortnight, and I love my dad. I'm very, very close to my parents still. But during that time, it was very difficult just being that age, and I didn't know who I was anymore. Like, the whole adoption thing didn't really matter to me until that day. So I went to school pretty much the next day, and people would call my name out. Matt, is Matt here? And roll call. I'd be like, no, I don't know who that is. I started going downhill after that. So I got suspensions, and my mum was single mum for a couple of years, and she worked a couple of jobs, and it was kind of like, from the surface, I was a nice kid who I just got really hurt, and hurt turns into anger a lot of the time. So I just was spraying anger everywhere because I was hurt so bad, and I guess that's kind of the genesis of where a lot of things happened. That defining moment of knowing I was adopted, my parents separating, kind of blew my whole identity open, and then I started just gravitating toward the most confident alpha male people I could find in my school, because I was meeting an emotional need of security and of belonging, because my whole world was blown apart with moving houses 10 times, 12 times as a kid, and all that. So I tell this in schools a lot, guys, that if there's anything on social media that you see, I bring it back to this story, because it's like, man, it's not all glam. My life has subjectively been a road of pilgrimage. So from there on, boys, I started getting suspensions. I remember one time I got suspended because I'm really good at, you guys love baseball over there, don't you?
Yes.
Yeah. Not us in particular, but in America, it's a big sport
as a
for
whole.
sure.
Yeah.
In Australia, we have a version called cricket.
Yes.
Have you heard of cricket?
Yes, we have.
Yeah, it's the most it's a really long game. You don't see a lot of dragging your missus along to those games is a death wish.
Yeah.
I remember my mum dragging along. Yeah, I used to play rep cricket. I was a pretty good cricket player. My dad always put me in sports and pushed me toward creativity growing up, which was a great thing with his parenting. But one day, one of my big suspensions was my mates were always up to no good, always ripping on the teachers, always just picking on, I guess, easy targets as students. I can get into that a bit later, what makes that up. But they said, hey, throw this apple and hit Tim. And Tim was about 20 meters away. He had a really good arm. And I just said, okay, without thinking, I just flung this apple across, and I could hear it spinning. It was like the whole world just stopped. You could hear it, and it's in slow motion. I'm like, as soon as I let go of that apple, it's like, it's going to be a good one. It's going for the back of his head. I can see it. And then at the last minute, he turned around and bang, it broke his nose, and he was in tears, and all my mates bolted, and I was like, oh no, what have I done? And my mum was called up. She had to leave her job. I was suspended for 2 weeks. And those 2 weeks, we ate pretty much 2-minute noodles and mince meat, like the cheapest meals you could have. And that's when I started changing my way. I started really thinking, wow, this really impacted my whole family, for like literally our income. My mum's employment, her thoughts toward me. The school, it just really magnified what my actions were producing.
Yeah.
So that wasn't about when I was about 10 years old. So yeah, I mean, you guys got any thoughts on that so far? Can you guys
Yeah,
I'll
absolutely. So
slide through because I could talk forever about this.
yeah, well, so we want to frame the whole story. So at 6 years old, that's when you found out about the divorce. Your dad had a girlfriend, Jacqueline. You had some identity issues going on there. You gravitated towards what you referred to as your mates that were kind of the alphas for security, and they kind of were influencing you in a way that you realized after the Apple incident, when you said you were 10, that that's like not ideal or who you really want to be.
Mm,
So
that's right. Yeah,
so leading into and you have two other people in the room right now that grew up with single mothers, so you're in good company here, and we're
that's
no
correct.
strangers to adversity. So I like that we're all being open and honest about this stuff. So from 10 and on, when you started to kind of self-reflect and go, okay, this decision I made to throw that apple hurt that person. These influences on me affected not only me but my mom, her income, all of that. When did you kind of transfer into personal growth and wanting to be the best version of yourself and then wanting to really dissect what it takes to do that?
Yeah, well, after that Apple incident, there was lots of. I was all kind of leading up to a big explosion. I was getting in trouble for lots of things actually, and that which just kind of just like topped it off. And my mum and dad were still talking to each other to parent, and they both suggested to put me into some mentoring or a program or into some more creative arts to be able to get some of my feelings out and to find better role models. And I resisted it, to be honest, for a while. Like my dad pushed me into sport. I didn't mind sport and excelled at that. But it was when he bought me a guitar for Christmas. I was about like 11. That's when the game changed. Hey, like because I always enjoyed listening to music, but never really thought anything of playing it. So he said, "Oh, do you want to just play guitar?" That's as casual as it was. I'm like, "I'll give it a go." And he bought me this guitar, and I got lessons. And within the first 2 weeks, I'm like, "This is it. Like, this is my aeroplane. This is my flipping vehicle to be able to get so much out." And everyone starts out as a beginner, and I started out just like everyone else, just terribly. I mean,
Yep.
it's funny. My dad, when he sings, things die. Like he's a terrible. He's got no musical bone in his body, and so I was kind of like being adopted. I come back to my adoption now and then. Is I have no idea of my biological makeup. Like I don't know anything about my parents, and what tendencies I have of theirs. So in my adopted family in Australia, no one's musical. No one's really like got a creative bone in their body. So I excelled really quickly at music and started like wanting to pen some lyrics down and learnt my favorite songs and started getting into bands and started trying to perform even as an 11, 12-year-old kid. And I really quickly found that by, I guess, attaching myself to an activity which I can excel in, which is part of like the positive psychology model actually is part of it is engaging in things that are really a skill base and you can achieve great things in. It really gave me a sense of identity and worth and something to give back to the world and a new opportunity and confidence to be able to approach new people. So my parents put me into a church youth group as a kid. And that was a great influence growing up because I was introduced to a lot of this particular church. It was like a Pentecostal church. They had a band. I joined the band. That was great. They had practices each week. That was awesome. And it had these really great older guys that were cool. Like they looked cool. They sounded cool, but they didn't act like losers like my friends were. Like they weren't necessarily like telling their parents to F off and getting intoxicated and coming to school. Like these guys had the goods without doing the bad stuff. So I was like really intrigued by that. So I was mentored by a particular guy and he always used to take me out once a fortnight for a coffee or hot chocolate at the time and ask me questions. And that was a really great experience, which we carried into my coaching now. It's really by experiencing the impact of just asking questions, having a guy consistently or person consistently, just without being paid even. Like, he was not getting paid for this. Just out of the goodness of his heart, just wanting to see me do well. That really profoundly impacted me a lot.
Can I ask you a question? So I know we got off the childhood a little bit, but I had a buddy reach out to me today and say something about he tends to blame himself for things that have happened to him. And the one thing that I said is, growing up without a father, not a single time did I ever blame myself. And this wasn't a conscious thing. I didn't think it was my fault. But did you ever find yourself blaming yourself for your parents splitting? And do you have any techniques where, somebody who's going through something that they are blaming themselves for, do you have any techniques where they can kind of take a step back and realize, like, this was going to happen anyway, it's not truly your fault?
Yeah. I'm the same as you, man. I didn't blame myself. The thought had popped in my head because I think what people do is when something happens outside your control, our brain has a bias part in our brain. It's like confirmation bias. When you have a belief about anything, and it's something particularly that's outside your control, you need to be able to, I guess, put that cause or put that pain toward a cause or something. And the easiest thing to do is to wipe the dirt on your own shirt, so to speak, and blame yourself, because you're the closest thing to the problem at the time. Like, it's easy to do that. So it's like, yeah, it's my fault. It's probably because I did this. It's probably I did that. And our confirmation bias looks for confirmation in words and experiences and in people's opinions. So a lot of children do that. A lot of adults do that. And it's misplacement of responsibility, because we need to actually guide. What I do is, and in therapy they do this, they help try and get you to become unbiased toward it. Look at the problem objectively.
Yeah.
So a good exercise would be to either talk it out with a friend or, as cliche as it sounds, write down the problem and look at this exercise as, this is not an emotional process. This is just a science project where my parents, for example, this is the problem. They split up. What caused that? What may have caused that? And you're not allowed to be emotional about it. You just got to be able to look at, well, cause and effect. And if you don't know any of the answers, it should lead you to have conversations with people, to be able to ask questions to dad, to ask questions to mum, if it's really bothering you, to shed the light on that thing is really creates a lot of closure. Because, for example, as kids, when we grow up, we hear noises in the dark and we think it's the biggest monster on the planet. And I remember this story. I tell this story sometimes. I had this monster in my bedroom, I thought, and my dad came in one night after months of screaming and crying, waking him up. He brought me over with the light to be able to look at what was causing those noises. And it wasn't a monster. It was the wooden floorboards with the wind coming up through the floorboards. It was a tapping on the window from a branch, and it was our flipping alleyway, which our bins in our garden was, which is an echo chamber. And as soon as I was shown that stuff, I knew it wasn't a monster, and I slept like a baby, so to speak. Waking up 2 times a night, peeing my pants. That's what a baby does. But stupidest step.
Kevin still does
ever.
that.
Yeah, I still do that, Matt. Don't feel bad.
Yeah, I wear diapers, guys.
Yeah.
If
you have any mediums, feel free to send them. I'll pay the international shipping.
Yeah, well, there's a great brand I'd like to plug right now.
Sure.
Alpha male diapers, they're called.
I love
Alpha male.
They even have a fly and a zipper on the front of them in
There
case
you
you
go.
want to go.
That's forward thinking right there.
Yeah, so yeah, if you've got a problem and you're blaming yourself for it, that's actually really unintelligent unless you've actually proven it. Every claim needs evidence, right?
I love that.
You need to be intellectually and emotionally honest. Is this really your fault? Prove it. How's it your fault? Give me 3 reasons why it's your fault. Give me 3 times. If I ask 3 people that were closest to that person who you feel like you've hurt, if it was your fault, would they agree with you? No, they probably wouldn't. So you've got to test every claim. And we often leave claims unquestioned. And that's when you get these big monsters in your life, for sure.
Matt, so that leads me perfectly into one of the questions that I really wanted to ask you. In one of your speeches on your Instagram, you mentioned that, and I noticed you ask a lot of questions to your audience, which I think is awesome. I really love how you do that. But basically, you said that you need to have criteria for testing other people's opinions. Kevin and I talk about this a lot on the podcast. We're all about going hyperconscious, which is very similar to what you just said. Write it down and treat it like a science project objectively, so that you can get to the bottom of what's really causing things, and then you have the power to change them if you do, or just, accept it and realize it's not your fault. So to get to my question, you said you need to have criteria for testing other people's opinions. And basically, you said that you have a specific criteria for that. Is that something that's in your book? And if so, what is your criteria?
Yeah, a little bit in my book, actually. It's about testing beliefs, testing claims. I work with the work I do with youth. I have a great network of professionals where we help each other out. One is a criminal lawyer. This guy is he's got a tough job, but he's got strong shoulders. I mean, this guy goes to court and represents people that have been accused of all sorts of things, or actually guilty people who have done it on purpose or have just had a moment of weakness.
Yep.
So I've learned a lot from my friend Mark. He's a lawyer, about this stuff, and we've formed a great little thing on based on the law, basic law in Australia. So basically, the premise is anyone can say a claim. Anyone. Kevin, your mate Alan could say to the world on Facebook, "Hey, Kevin stole all my money, and he's been talking to my girlfriend behind my back. He's a player, and he's a filthy stealer and a thief."
Yep,
right?
I could post that.
Anyone could say that.
I never would, but yes.
Until now.
Yeah, I just tweeted it, Matt. I just tweeted it. So now what do we do about that?
Yeah, so anyone lots of people make claims, especially with online these days. And the unfortunate thing, guys, that I see is people don't question the claims they see online a lot, and they don't question the gossip that gets brought toward them in conversation. People use gossip as a bonding tool, and it's a real shame. So what we're going to do is, with any claim, I'll tell you a story to illustrate it. There's a boy I was mentoring last year who was at a party, and people were drinking, and everything was pretty fine apart from that. Everyone's a little bit tipsy, and then this guy was laying on the couch just kind of chilling out. This girl comes over and lays next to him. There's witnesses who saw all this. And they kissed and they cuddled, and she just got up and left and walked away just casually and went to see other friends. They go to school together. The next day, they're at school. The following week, they're at school sitting next to each other in class. Everything was normal. They've known each other for a couple of years. Next minute, on Friday, the end of that week, he's at the canteen line trying to buy some food. And this girl that he was cuddling with, sitting next to in class too, came over and made a massive scene in front of the whole school in the playground, saying, "You abused me. You touched me. You abused me. I'm going to take you down, and everyone needs to know how bad you are. And I'm going to take this to the cops and tell them the police and tell them the principal." And he's blindsided, had no idea, and people were like, "No, it's not the case. It's not the case." Behind, when it wasn't in public. But who do you think the students believed?
The girl.
The girl, of course. And we should take claims seriously, but we shouldn't believe them without. We shouldn't believe claims unintelligently.
Yeah.
So, well, that sounds bad. A good response to that would be, "That sounds terrible." If that is true, then that is really hospital. What that word is, I can't remember, mate. But that's really terrible. We need to look into that. We need to get evidence. We need to get witnesses. That's what a lawyer would say. Now, people don't do that. So my mate that I mentor, he came home absolutely traumatized. Told
Yeah.
his mum, he's a single mum too. She freaked out, and then the online bullying started. His whole reputation was getting smashed from this event. Like
My goodness.
inboxes, death threats. When I see you next, I'm gonna smash your face in, like violent threats. So
Mm.
the mum decided, well, I'm gonna have to get some advice from my son. Like I don't know what to do, and she called me after she booked a lawyer, unfortunately, because I don't think she needed to do that straight away. So she rang me and she said I already paid $600 that I really can't afford to a lawyer. So I'm like, listen, I'll go with you. Then the lawyer basically said what I'm about to tell you guys. It's like, well, when these things are said, claims are said, they're taken seriously, but they the burden of proof is on the person who makes the claim.
Okay.
So the burden of proof is on the person who makes the claim. So, Sam, it's not your job to prove yourself innocent. It's her job to prove you guilty.
Okay.
Do you understand that? So,
Yeah.
because she's the one with the problem making the claim, she has to be the one who gathers the evidence. Now,
Yeah.
we came up with a good defense, and protection. It's like, well, we got our witnesses. We pulled together who we knew were there, and unfortunately, people need to kind of voice their concern, voice their care for people when this happens,
Yeah.
and that takes a lot for some people because we live in a world where a majority of people are agreeable, and it makes the world go round. It's great. Agreeable people are amazing. They're there when you need them, and they'll, like help you move house when you need it. They're just great, generous people. But when it comes to confrontation, it's probably one of the challenges.
Yeah.
So, needless to say, with this story, there wasn't enough witnesses for her end. Fortunately, she had friends that did testify because he voiced this guy, a mentor, voiced his opinion online, saying, "Listen, with my advice, like this has affected me mentally. Um, this is not true. There's no proof for this, and blah blah blah." And we went down in this really good response online, and it went really well. But unfortunately, the bullying didn't stop completely, and he had to move schools because it affected his mental health so much. And
Mm.
but all the claims and stuff were proven. That's falsified. There wasn't any evidence. There wasn't enough proof to be able to say. It's an extreme story to be able to illustrate the criteria you need to be able to combat claims and to combat accusations. It's like you need to ask the who, what, when, why, how questions.
Yeah, absolutely. Like the what's the board game Clue to figure out, it's Colonel Mustard in the pool room with the candlestick. You can't just assume that until you have evidence. So you mentioned testing beliefs. So like your own beliefs. We on this podcast talk very frequently about limiting beliefs, especially so like I'll be in the gym, for example, and I'll be talking to someone who wants to get in shape, and I can immediately tell in the conversation that they have one specific limiting belief that is just holding them back. And I know that their current belief system is not going to get them the body they want. And that's probably because I'm in that arena and I broke through that belief at some point, right? So when someone has a limiting belief and it's someone you're mentoring or someone you're coaching, what do you do to test that belief in a way that they go, oh, wow, that's actually not true. That's just the story I've been telling myself?
Yeah, that's a good question. There's a few things I do. I educate them on how powerful beliefs are. So people will agree, yeah, I have beliefs. We all have beliefs. It's a blanket statement we all agree upon. But we got to understand why are beliefs important? Why do you boys think beliefs are important? Like how do they affect our lives?
I firmly believe that your thoughts and your beliefs become your life, and you end up. I firmly believe, Matt, that you end up where you believe you'll end up. Like, I firmly believe that.
So I think that beliefs are like the sort of set of the sail regarding, so you have a destination that you want to shoot for, a goal or a dream. I know that you mentioned on one of your speeches that to you, success is just effectively reaching a goal. So let's say you want to get from the east coast of the U.S. to the west coast of the U.S., take off in a plane. If you believe you'll get there, and then you believe that you have the gas in the tank to get there, eventually you will. Whereas if you believe that you cannot get there, you'll never even take off. So beliefs
That's
are
right,
kind of
yeah.
like the guiding force, if you will, to our behavior. and eventually our results.
That's true. So what I do, I have a framework I'd love to give you guys today that really illustrates the power of belief that's positive and like detrimental. So it's either an elevator up or like an absolute stairway to hell, pretty much, to showcase the hell. Because beliefs, like you said just then, determine your actions. So if you say, like that whole quote from Henry Ford, if you believe you can or you believe you can't, regardless, you're right.
You're right, yeah.
Yeah, so if you think you can, if you think you're dumb, like I'm not very academically smart, then that's going to affect the amount of effort you put toward any task that requires you to use your brain.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
If you believe if this is what I do, right? I get people to scale themselves on a scale of 1 to 10. I say, listen, how smart do you think you are? I'm like, well, what do you mean? Well, academically. Well, I'm a 4. I often pull in one of their best friends or a parent. How smart do you think this guy is academically? They're often a lot higher than what they just said.
Yeah.
It's like 7. But if you think you're a 4 out of 10 for your body image, your academic potential, then if your goal is a 7, then you're gonna say I'm not good enough, and you're not gonna put any effort in. You're gonna write it off.
Yeah.
So beliefs are that limiting factor, but they're so powerful because they do actually really affect your effort, which produces your actions. But it doesn't stop there. Your beliefs produce your actions, but your actions produce a result.
Yep. And then the result affects your identity.
It does. Your results reinforce that belief you had in the start.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's why it can be a downward spiral or an elevator up.
Yes.
Because you say, hey, listen, I'm not very smart. I'm a 4 out of 10. I'm going to put much effort in subconsciously because I'm not very smart.
Yeah.
Then you get that 40% failure mark as a result. Then it reinforces that belief. Told you I was dumb, guys.
Yeah, exactly. I told you. So it reaffirms it. Interesting.
Matt, how do you deal with this? Is something we've talked about extensively on the podcast, and the theory that we have is, or the thing that we do is, like, what we talk about on the podcast, we talk about when the cameras aren't on, when the mics aren't on. It's no different.
Oh, yeah.
This is what we talk about constantly. And one of the things we talk about is failure, and how most people avoid failure so much that they never learn that failure actually is a great teacher. How do you take that initial step? And I've asked a lot of people this, and I've gotten so many great answers, but I want to hear your take on it. How do you take that first initial step of being willing to fail? Just kind of saying, you know what, fuck it, I'm going to do this. If I fail, It is what it is. I'll learn from it. How do you take that first step?
I use 2 approaches. For me personally, I've taken a lot of risks toward failure, and it's either come from a place of recognizing something about death that really gets me going. It sounds like it's a stoic way of looking at life.
Yep.
I honestly feel like we procrastinate a lot over, like just getting started on something because our brains are like geared to avoid danger. Like naturally, it's a dangerous thing to be able to step out towards the unknown. And we can theorize a lot, like oh yeah, this could happen, this could happen, this could happen, and not do it. So what I do is I look at, when I played basketball one time, this is a good analogy. I looked at when you see that scorecard or that clock counting down, or you're in that exam, when you can see the clock counting down how many minutes you got left, it makes you try and do as much as possible with the time you've got.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And I use that with my life because I have no guarantee of tomorrow. I'm probably going to be around because I'm young and I'm relatively healthy physically, but I could be walking time bomb for all I know. People don't really get a letter in the mail from life saying you're going to die in 7 days. Just beware. So I use that as a thing. Well, like this makes me want to live. This makes this idea worthwhile, or it really doesn't make this idea worthwhile, and I just need to focus on what matters more. What also gets me started is just experiencing the same results over and over and over again until I'm just sick and tired of getting what I'm getting. Like that's what happens to a lot of people. It's like you tolerate. Like people are pretty resilient to change.
Yeah, naturally.
Like I don't want to. I know I'm fat. I know I'm not very good looking. Or not very smart. I know I could be trying harder. You could ask anyone in the street. Like they could all say, "Oh, I agree. I could try harder." But they're not going to try harder unless you have some type of thing pushing them forward and some fear pushing them forward. So I'll tell you an experiment quickly. This is the science of motivation. This is a study on rats. So basically, the idea on motivation is that I think it's in Germany. They did a study where they wanted to test out what would make a rat go through a really hard maze to get to the end and push itself to its limit. So they put food at the end of it. Obviously, they starved it a little bit, and it did go through at a certain pace. That's one good thing from that. So incentives work. But after a while, that rat didn't really push itself. It was just taking its time, just getting through it. No, it's going to be there.
Mm-hmm.
So what they did to really test this rat's motivation, is put a waft of cat at the front of it, and that smell of cat produced that fear toxin, that reaction to, wow, there's something to lose if I was to stay the same.
Yes.
So there was fear pushing this rat forward toward a good goal.
Plus the incentive.
I believe to actually start something really well and keep at it and to face fear is you need to have some type of worse fear pushing you forward. It's like if I was to remain the same, this is worse than if I was to stay here. This is bad. It's like the whole Sun Tzu boat thing, burn the boats thing. It's like you burn the boat.
Island.
Yeah, and you're like, there's only two options now. I'm going to die, or I'm going to fight harder than I ever fought before. It's the same type of psychology. It's like we often don't have something. We're not really exposing ourselves to the reality, the dangerous reality that everything's on the line. That if I don't try something now, that chaos grows. You know, the more I don't give attention to the things that I want to happen, the problems get bigger. They don't stay the same. Like they don't just stay the same size. You grow older, your body gets older, people progress, the world progresses, and you're staying the same. Like that's problems are going to get bigger. So we need to have a fear that pushes us forward, an incentive that's worthwhile enough to excite us to get out of bed enough to be able to have that.
I think that's such a great point, because you think of a lot of people are just treading water, and if you stuck a shark in the tank with them, like they're going to start swimming for shore, because you're not just going to sit there with your biggest fear right on your ass. You're going to have to make a move. And like you said, staying the same is worse, because you don't stay the same. You're just going to tread water until you drown, basically. You're going to get more tired. You're going to get more frustrated. And I think that was a ridiculous answer. That was awesome. So thank you so much for sharing that with us.
Yeah, well said, man. I really like the science of motivation stuff you just said. I love the psychology and all of that. The one thing I wanted to say, or kind of get your take on, is what's a practical use of this in your own life? Like, so for example, let's say you have one specific goal, that's the cheese. What is the fear? Is the fear the regret in the future? Because what's a quote from one of my favorite books? I'm sure you've read The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy.
Oh, I haven't actually.
Okay,
that sounds good.
Favorite book of all time. Gotta plug that. I always do. You will love it based on everything I've heard so far. But basically, what he says is, if we had a burger and fries and had a heart attack the next day, we would stop eating burgers and fries.
Yeah.
And the problem is that it's so far in the future that it's not painful now, so we don't change. So what's an example in your life where you wanted to do something, you knew you wanted to do it, but you're like, you know what, I'm just not changing for some reason. What do I have to do to get leverage on myself to make a change, and using sort of fear to do that?
Oh, that's a great question. I've done it heaps of times. So when I was back to my story, even it goes back to my story. So I went through when I finished high school, I didn't really know what I wanted to do as a career, and I was really good at music, and I wanted to tour and be a musician. But I also had been impacted by those mentors I had in my life. You know, they were all about looking after the poor and the needy and meeting needs in the city. So I've got a really big passion for community, and so I wanted to do something that was aligned with those values. So I was very lucky to actually know 150% that I wanted to align myself with helping needy people, like orphans, widows, families. So I'm like, okay, well, I went out and my dad suggested I should try and have a backup plan for music if it doesn't do well, and I'm glad I did. So I did some study with some mental health stuff. I started a business with doing guitar tutoring, and that was where it all started. It was like when I started tutoring guitar, it actually was the first organic moment where I'm like, well, this is actually isn't a guitar session. Statistics are showing me in Australia that the average father spends less than 10 minutes of quality time with their kids a week.
Really?
Wow.
Like, that's not shoulder to shoulder. There's lots of time shoulder to shoulder in the car watching TV, but having an intimacy, like an intimacy moment with the kids. I'm like, wow. So if that stats rings any truth to it, with this, like I'm spending more time in a half hour to an hour session with students than their own family, their own dad. And after a term or two, every one of my students became pretty much an accidental life coaching mentee. And I wasn't into life coaching back then. That didn't exist that term. I was mentoring these kids because they were telling me, the guitar teacher, I got bullied at school today. My parents just like left me by myself, and I drank alcohol by myself today, and I'm doing drugs. I had sex the other day. Like, it's like, for the first time, you're the first human being in the world to be told that. I'm like, wow, this is crazy. And it got to, and then, but the problem was not just that; it was growth as well. I was growing with the business, and then my touring and speaking was taking off too. So I had all these two things that were going very well, and not enough hands and not enough. I couldn't clone myself to be able to do it. So
we know that feeling.
Yeah. So when people say, "Oh, that's growth is a good problem to have," it's a freaking problem to have. Like, it's a massive problem. Or it's a good
Growing
problem to
pains.
have.
We call them growing pains.
Matt, we were thinking that when I saw your number, and I was like, I don't know how to dial this number.
Yeah.
What is this?
Australia, 14-hour time difference. This is failing forward right here, Matt.
Yeah, that's it. And I was like, well, what do I do? And so I made a decision based on my values, based on my actual, like, my belief of, I want to be a good husband one day. I want to be a good dad one day. I'd be a hypocrite if I just chose a career in my life that I was away for 100 hours a week, and that would compromise my value of being a good dad, a good partner, and all that. So I decided to pull back on touring as a full-time musician and focus on the business. Now, I grew this business as big as I could at home. I started in my own home, and after making a decision to cut off music touring, that was really easy because that was just two worlds colliding. So that's one situation with the whole fear and the whole incentive. It's like, well, you get to that place, you got to choose one or the other.
So the fear in this case would be living inconsistent with your highest value, which is to eventually be a good father. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, my fear in this like version is, like, if I continue going with music, then I am essentially saying potentially no to being being a hypocrite in my values. Like,
yeah, exactly.
I've seen it too many times, guys. Like, I've got friends who are quite done very well in the music industry and business, millionaires, that I will say the same thing. They're all most of them are bachelors at 40, still, and that's all good for them, because that's what they've chosen to do. But that's compromise. That's completely opposite to what I believe as a person. So, so I said no out of fear of, I'm gonna actually not know my son or my daughter. I'm gonna be lonely. That's one take. But then, my business grew. Like, okay, I've got to focus on my business and grow this thing properly. It got to the point where I couldn't have people at my house anymore. It gets to the point where you can't be seen as a commercial business. Kids coming to your house, getting lessons and stuff with multiple tutors in the kitchen. Like, it's not good.
You outgrew your kitchen.
Yeah, I grew the bowl. Yeah, I grew my toilet. Yeah. Just imagine it. The garage. Anyway. Now, and then, so the fear was this. The fear was like, okay, the goal was, okay, we need to get a commercial premises. We looked into that. It's thousands of dollars for bricks and mortar, thousands of dollars for insurance. A completely big investment, to like financially, and okay. if I'm gonna do this, I need to give myself a certain amount. This is the point here, guys. I need to give myself a deadline. Like,
Yep.
if I did this right, I say yes and I sign the papers, which we did. I've got 3 months to be able to grow this thing by 100 students, or I'm broke.
That is some motivation right there.
You were burning your boats. You could smell the rat in the maze. You could smell the cat outside. You know.
Yeah, and the reason why I didn't just stay at home is because if I continued to stay there, I wouldn't have grown anymore, and I actually think I would have lost students.
Interesting.
Because like people in my business, people like with the tutoring and coaching business they're all progressing to the age brackets and stuff, and people are transitioning out all the time, and I need to be able to to continue doing it. The runes weren't really functional for that, so I would have, if I just stayed there, been like, forget paying that money, forget investing. I reckon I would have sunk pretty quickly, just to back to square one of just being me and one other person, which wasn't my goal. My goal was to expand this thing to a point where I can create a system that can run by itself, and that will reward all my years of hard work, that will continue to coach kids and families in my philosophy of life, and that's what we're doing now. But I gave myself 3 months after paying a massive check to the owner of this place, and I hustled more than I ever did, and my wife got me too. But when you've got a deadline, when you've got an actual like time frame, that's part of the SMART goals framework anyway, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yes.
So
that really creates that fear.
Absolutely. That was great. That was a great point as well. I wanted to touch. So you gave a little bit of statistics regarding like fathers and sons in Australia. I think I saw somewhere on your Instagram the percentages and the ratios of depressed like teens in Australia.
Yeah.
Can you? So one of the things you say is less type and more talk, and I'll let you explain what that means and what that means to you. But do you think that social media, the facade that we put up, that everything is great even when it's not, and also the fact that we avoid so much feedback because we don't really talk to people with our mouths anymore, do you think that social media is one of the big reasons for such a rise in depression? And do you think that there is a way that we can continue to grow with social media, but realize that you're only seeing the highlight reel of people's lives?
Yeah, I think everyone I've spoken to, and I think you guys would have this same feedback. When you talk to people on an individual level, they would agree on that. They would agree on that. Yeah, people put up show reels. You know, they put up the highlights, and I think there's a certain level of privacy which you don't want to show people. You know, the lowest of lows as well, like because sometimes you got to remain wise with who you like communicate your major issues with, because not everyone should have an equal place in your life to be able to give feedback to you. And that's the thing that I think people aren't coached in. To get back to that point, social media is an amazing tool. There's so many great things to it, but I think our human nature and our brains look to avoid danger at all costs. It's a survival mechanism. It's part of a reptilian function of our brains. And I think social media and our technology has made it very comfortable for us to rather than drive down the street to be able to get the pizza, we can get it delivered. You can get everything delivered to your door. If you're going to have a more convenient option that's just as effective as getting up and talking to someone physically, you're going to take it.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Like, I think that's my psychology behind why we're so glued to these things. And apart from the millions and millions of dollars spent on you just having an unfair fight with
marketing.
Design and marketing, and like the colors they even use and the placement of where the buttons are on the screen and everything coming up at the right time. That's almost like a unfair fight for anyone to resist.
So I don't mean to interrupt you, but you're obviously all about the psychology. You mentioned the reptilian brain. You mentioned that convenient choices over the more difficult but maybe long-term better option. like you take Amazon, right? I mean, Jeff Bezos, that company has made it unbelievably easy to shop there, and therefore we all do. And I understand that it saves us time and money in a lot of cases. So I'm not hitting on Amazon. I think they're a wonderful company, but
Yeah,
what I think you're touching on is something very important, which is when the easier option is available, people are going to tend to take that option, but it's not always what's best in the long run for our long-term growth when it comes to like talking
exactly.
to someone and actually getting that feedback. There's a specific quote that Kevin mentioned that you mentioned in one of your speeches, which is basically we talk to our friends more through typing than talking these days. And you said
That's true.
you said we learn how to communicate through failure and through feedback, but that we're not having as much of that anymore. What do,
Yeah.
for our listeners in particular, because we want to kind of rise above this social media era in terms of our own psychology, what's something that we can tell the listeners to maybe a practical tip of like day to day? How do I make sure that I'm, improving my communication by actually going out and communicating with people and failing forward?
Yeah, I think I like to think there's a hierarchy for natural hierarchy for nearly everything in nature. And in communication, I think there are definitely top tier ways to communicate that translate the message and your motive 100% clearer, like broadcasting it clearer than just through a text message and an emoji. So it's a different toolkit. I'm not going to go at it as the devil, the social media and text messaging and stuff. I think it's great for a lot of reasons. But when you're trying to get to know people on an intimate level, you can't. There's a certain point where that can take. There's only a certain limit that can take you. For example, I was in a school in Sydney, a big grammar school, and a boy convinced everyone that he had a girlfriend, and it was actually someone from another country who they've never met, and he kind of made a joke of it. He's like, "Well, we kind of get home from school and we hang out. We watch a movie together online.
Yeah.
We even built a house together. We bought a house together on Minecraft.
Yeah.
But it all sounds really convincing. But I'm like, but bro, how are you gonna don't you want to hug her?
Yeah, right.
Have you ever kissed her? How are you gonna raise a family together? What's marriage look like? Or what's a long-term relationship look like? Have you met her parents? And it completely falls to pieces. It's like, well, exactly. So it gets you to a certain point to get to know people. But if you want to become a better friend, a better husband, a better human being, I think nature wins. When you look at nature and go, well, what actually makes us get to know each other? It's like eating food, like the five senses. Look at our senses.
Yeah.
When we experience all our senses and our intuitions together, it creates long-lasting relationships and long-lasting negative effects too. The number one reason from Dr. Susie Green, he's a good friend of mine now, top psychologist in Australia, she says the number one reason why people go to therapy is because they have poor relationships with their family or loved ones. Like, that's why people go, number one reason. And I think communication is the number one reason, because we're not willing to, first of all, we're not very good at articulating what we want to say. We don't say it in the way, because it's not about what you say, it's also about how you say it too. So how are you saying what you want to say to somebody matters. What you say to someone really matters. And when you say it, it matters too.
Yeah.
So I guess this is such a big topic. We talk about this for ages, but the communication tool we have with, I guess I'll finish with a question. For whatever context you're in, if you want to get to know somebody really well, or you've got a conflict with somebody really well, look at your tools. What would be the most effective approach to be able to resolve that problem? Like effective, meaning long-term effective. Like, you've got to probably see this person tomorrow or next week if you care about them. They're probably going to respond to you, and if you don't respond back, it's naturally a sign of like you're rude, or you don't want to. The answer is no. I mean, in law, if you don't respond, in court to something, you're pleaded guilty. So, so you got to look at what tools are available to you. What is the most effective way to produce the best outcome? Is it to confront them on the phone? Is it to confront them in person? I always try and convince people that people are worthy of respect enough to have your time and the presence, physical presence. Try and talk to them individually.
Yeah, and getting
because
that
you see
engagement.
their facial, because your brain learns through visual as well as audible, and like looking at letters. It's like you can see their facial expressions if they're hurt. You can look at their body language if they're hurt or happy. That's how kids learn from a young age what right and wrong is.
Yeah.
It's like that game went too far, and you poked daddy's eye, that really hurt. I'm expressing pain in my face. My tone of voice changed. Like it's really basic. Going back to the real first causes of communication, is like we learn from observation, not just through essay writing.
Kevin and I always talk about this on the podcast. It's, obviously we would be in Australia if we could be right now, but we prefer in-person interviews. Maybe we'll do one day with you. But I think it's, like you said, you don't have all the tools at your disposal in terms of the visual, the energy in the room, the seeing their body language, which I think it's something like, and again, this is just me quoting the verbiage, the general known knowledge out there. It's something like the voice is only 7%, I think, of communication. Then there's tonality, there's smell, there's energy in the room, there's body language, there's all those other things, facial expressions you mentioned. So one of the things Kevin and I often say is you don't go to the gym once and then you're fit for life. Like you got to go to the gym every day if you want to be strong, fit, and healthy. And the same thing goes with good communication. Like you should be communicating with people on the regular. And I know Kevin can attest to this. I'm sure you can too as a speaker. With the podcast, we meet a bunch of new people that are interesting and we talk to them, we communicate with them, we connect with them. And it's made us significantly better at communication.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely.
Yeah. I think it's one of the misconceptions of a lot of people is, communication. Yeah, like we all do it. So therefore, we all probably is in the back of our heads. I guess we could get better at that. A lot of people do that with their health as well and their money and all that. But it's like being intentional about your communication. That's what you guys are talking about.
Yes.
Man, that's vital. And I think a lot of our problems come from a lack of communication because people aren't mind readers. A lot of guys and girls don't get your hints.
Oh, for sure. I liked how you said you chose your words perfectly. You said choose the most effective way, not the easiest way.
Yeah.
The most effective way to communicate. Usually the easiest way is not the correct way. It's usually the harder way that works. So I think the way you phrase that just makes so much sense to me. I absolutely love that.
Yeah, I'm kind of, my mind goes to, it's not black and white a lot of the time. It's like we've got a whole variety of options, but there may be a better one. I think it was an Aristotelian idea of the golden mean. Have you heard about the rule of there's always too much and too little, but there's the golden mean is the right amount for the right context at the right time. So like you can be too honest and not honest enough. You can be too angry and not angry enough. But whatever the context is, you've got to find that right amount. It's not just I'm always set to be a chauvinistic person. Oh, I'm just a shy guy and I can't do anything about it. No, that's fixed thinking. No, you've got to be adaptable to what the problem is in front of you. The person is in front of you. Yeah.
You've been reading some Aristotle over there, Matt. I see you.
Yeah, I love that. I'm more of a philosophical thinker than I am scientific. I love the science, but I love the philosophy because I think you boys do too, actually.
Oh, we do.
For sure.
We are philosophizers, and you are as well. we dig that about you.
So Matt, we're an hour in. We got like 10 minutes, like you said. I'd like to ask you one more question. I'm sure Alan will, and then I want you to be able to plug your book, your web, everything at the end, so everybody knows where to find you and all that. But this question is the question that I ask every guest. I ask people on the streets, what do you want to accomplish before you die? Like, what is your thing?
My thing before I die starts with providing a great life for my family. I've got a daughter. I've got a wife.
You got another daughter on the way, right?
I've got another daughter on the way.
Congrats.
Congratulations, man.
Yeah, they're my first blood relatives that I know of. So it's very profound to me.
Oh, my goodness.
Having kids. So my first point of call is whatever work I do, needs to support my family and my family. I want my work to involve my family and offer an opportunity to them, so the girls can have their first jobs there. Like I just want to spend as much time with my family doing what I do with my family. So that's my ultimate goal. Is that I know them and they know me, and that's my ultimate goal. And the second goal is to be able to continue what I'm doing with spreading the message of wellness. And I just want people to think and question everything in a good sense to find truth. I can't get away from that. Like it keeps me up at night.
Yeah, we know the feeling.
And that shows, Matt.
It does.
When I found your Instagram and went through it, I was mind blown at there is no filler. Like you don't have any videos you put up because you needed to post something that day. Every single thing on your Instagram is filled with value, and it literally you can use it right away. Right after you hear it, it clicks and you're like, oh, you know what? I can do that for sure. So I applaud you for sure. I applaud you for that.
Thanks, guys.
You're so welcome.
That's encouraging, man. Appreciate it.
Kevin showed me your profile. I just want to say a testament to the answer to the question that you just answered. I literally showed him. I was scrolling through your Instagram and I was like, he is next level. Like, look at these posts. These are all super professional, super profound. They're all just on point, and you clearly put a lot of effort into that, because that's what you're putting out into the world. And as you know, social media does have its downside, but you're leveraging it for good. And I really applaud you for that, because I think we need more people who are using that tool to help others rather than to maybe get something from them. So,
well, that's right, boys. I mean, the reason why I put so much effort in, and I've got an intern now that comes with me, and I like all those videos. There's an investment in that. I love that, and the reason why I put so much into that stuff is because the students I come across and meet, thousands of them a year, is they spend more time scrolling through that feed than they do with their parents, like we've been talking to, and their friends in the real world. So it's like, if we can have those type of messages, or even just have that as part of as an option for them if they're feeling down, and we all do at times, so able to be able to click on one of our profiles and get some tips about specific problems and reach out. We need to be there for these guys. We need to be there for each other. And I think our presence really helps balance that volume out. The volume's so loud with negativity in the world, as much as it is. So we need to have some we need some philosophers in the on the feed saying, hey, what about that? Why did you do that?
Yes, we do.
I love it.
And we will continue to do that to try to balance out some of the negativity.
Yeah.
So do you want to ask a question now?
Yeah, I was hoping I could throw one more in.
Yeah,
one of the questions, and I know you got to go, so we'll respect your time here, but one of the questions that I really, really like to ask everybody, there's actually 3 of them, and you don't have to go super in-depth into all 3 because we are running out of time. But one of them, I just lost my page here. One of them is, what's your favorite book and why? The next one is, who is your main hero and why? And then the last one is, do you have any mentors, and what do you think that has done for you?
Great. You'll have to remind me of probably the last question or 2. But
sounds good.
What's the first one was a book?
Yeah. What's your favorite book and why?
I've got it's so hard to find a favorite one.
That's why I love the question.
Well, I like Proverbs in the Bible.
That's definitely a choice.
Proverbs. Yeah.
The good book?
I think it's a great book. It's an ancient book. It doesn't matter if you're religious or not. There are
Powerful
great
stories.
timeless principles in that. And principles are the thing that are timeless. I mean, the thing about principles is they don't focus on the how, they focus on the why, right? And you find throughout history, a lot of the things, people don't change too much with our struggles and with our problems. Wars have existed, problems have existed, and they will continue to exist. So when we talk about ideas, not people or events, you're going to have things last a long time. And I like that about Proverbs. One of my favorite Proverbs is a wise king, before he goes into battle, something along the lines of, consults many counselors, like wise counsel.
Mm.
A leader he's got a desire to learn, and always has wise counsel. There's accountability, and there's also a desire to learn. And if you can treat everyone like they're a teacher, then you can learn. You're learning for life. In every situation you're in, you can you're panning for gold. For example, like what do I know? What don't I know about this situation? Like, I like to think sometimes when I'm in a room of people, like, how can I be the dumbest person in the room? So I can just get to know people and not let ego get in the road or anything get in the road. I just want to just pull gold from people. I love that about Proverbs. It's got so much stuff about our motives and about friendships and about work ethic. It's excellent.
That's what we're doing with you right now, Matt, is we're digging for gold and your wisdom. So that's awesome. And for the listeners, and we're both learning here. So the next question was, what's your favorite or who's your hero and why?
Oh, great question. Oh, just quickly, what I like about Proverbs quickly is it's got 31 chapters. So that's probably why I liked the book as a kid, because there's 31 days in a month sometimes. So you can read a chapter a day.
Interesting.
That was a good little tidbit from a mentor. Gave that to me. Who's my hero? There's lots of heroes I have. There's personal heroes that I know personally, and then there's heroes that are like, that have made a big impact in many people's lives.
That one. Both if you want.
I really respect my parents. Like, although they've been part of my story. What I like about a hero, any good hero in any narrative, is that you connect with a hero not just because they got powers, it's because they've got faults. Then you respond to both. You get inspired by the good stuff, and you also you connect with the faults. And my parents seriously are my heroes because, one, they couldn't have kids and they did something about it. Two, they chose me. Three, they picked up their mess when they made mess and worked really hard and tried their best to really invest their time and money into building me and my sister up. And we're doing really well for ourselves. And I really, and four, when they recognized that, we weren't responding to them as rebellious teenagers, they networked and outsourced us to positive community groups. And we always have open line of communication. And so I like that. My dad has good work ethic. He was a great financial planner. He's retired now. And my mum was a stay-at-home mum and was the best servant ever. Served us so much. So I've got the yin yang. I've got work ethic and I've got compassion with those two guys. Sure.
That's amazing, and it's clear that you do, by the way. I noticed in your speeches that you talk a lot about, because everyone's so focused on success, and we are too, obviously, and as you mentioned, your definition of success is you're effectively reaching a goal. But you mentioned that success is great, but it's like who's behind it, the character, the person, were they compassionate, were they good to others, did they treat others well? So we're obviously about reverse engineering the finish line, but what we're also about is who do you want to be as a person, and who do you want to be to others? So that's awesome. Do you have any heroes that are authors or speakers, like speakers in particular? So I always use this quote, and it's kind of a modification of one of my heroes, Tony Robbins. He says, where where focus goes, energy flows. I kind of modified that quote to where admiration goes, energy flows. And what I kind of wondered is, who's your hero? Because I think that shapes who we are quite a bit, and I was just curious.
Yeah, I love Tony Robbins. I'll name a few because they're all kind of up there with. They're all kind of like. You guys are probably the same. Where if you want to learn and about a particular thing, you have probably a set of 5 speakers or influencers that you'd really take stock in their opinion on. Tony Robbins is one of them for sure. Jordan Peterson's another one. I like Jordan Peterson. I've really been impacted by Tim Ferriss's books, obviously, through the years.
Yes.
Viktor Frankl's book was amazing.
Oh, yeah, it was.
Men's Search for Me. Like, a lot of the same books that these guys recommend reading, I've read, and I really look up to them. But, my mentor, like I had a mentor I still have him as a very close friend. He actually officiated my wedding. He's a minister, but he's actually has the largest. I think he has probably one of the largest chaplaincy not-for-profit organisations in Australia now. I toured with him as a teenager with schools. That's how I started speaking, was through this guy, Darren, and I started playing songs and singing, and we're both adopted. He's adopted from Australia, but within Australia, so we connected over that, and we toured in a 4-wheel drive and in planes. Like we have a massive country area, like little towns where no one comes through. We went there to big cities. For 5 years, we did that. 6 years on the road. Seen probably close to 1 million people, I reckon, on the road together. We've had massive amount of time in front of massive crowds in lots of places. And so Daz, but what I admired about Dazza, like Darren, is I was shown a way of life. He was away from his family a lot, and first thing in the morning, I'd always see him religiously do it. He'd call his family, ask him what's up for the day. He told me that they have a system when he's away. There's a cash stash in the account.
Mm-hmm.
They're meant to have as much fun as possible while he's away.
Cash
to
stash,
the point
I
where he
like
tries
that.
to the point where he calls up in the afternoon after school religiously, like, "Hey, I was at school today," and they're like, "Oh, too busy, got to go. It's too much fun." And he's like, "That's a good thing, you know." But he always call him in the morning, call him in after school, call him before bed, pray for him. Just a great way to look at life. Talk to their family, I spent nights at their house all the time. He's a legend, and he's done very well for himself too in business and in life. Probably the best role model I have with a holistic way of living, of traveling, and 5 kids, owns multiple properties. The guy's a legend.
I would say it's not a coincidence that you are where you are, because obviously we do end up, where the people closest to us end up, because we spend time with them and we partially become them. So that's why it's so important to surround yourself with positive people. I feel like we could talk for another 20 hours. So why don't you plug away? Where can people find you on Instagram? Where can people find Life Hacks for Mindful Living? Where can people book you for speeches? All of that happy jazz. Plug away.
Well, thank you very much. Now, guys, thanks a lot for having us, and I really feel connected to you guys. I think it's very, very cool that we can meet each other on this other side of the globe, talk on a phone, and feel like we've known each other for a lot longer than what we have had.
Right?
So it's amazing.
We have a huge smile on our faces right now. You will see that on YouTube.
Yes.
Because we're on camera now. But yeah, man, it's amazing that we can do this. Like 40 years ago, this was not a thing. Not even 20 years ago, this wasn't a thing. So I feel like I told Kevin this before the podcast. I said, this is going to be awesome. Like, I can tell by his page that, and like what you were saying in your speeches and, all of that. I was just like, yeah, we're going to connect, no problem. I also mentor kids. Like, I do speeches for kids, and me and you are 2 peas in a pod, man.
Oh, so good. Well, we'll have to tee up another session sometime. Hey?
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely.
I guess the stuff to go to is just type in Matt Purcell. That's Purcell, and the book's on my website. That's mattpurcell.com, or through Amazon and Kindle. And if you just type in my name, you'll find everything, guys. Like it's pretty cool with the Google searches these days.
Right.
YouTube, there's Facebook, there's Instagram. But I'm mostly on Instagram. I find Instagram being the a better platform to. It's just so much better, I think, in my opinion, than Facebook algorithms hard and and all that stuff. So it's been good. Thanks, guys.
Well,
Awesome.
Thank you so much for sitting down and chatting with us, Matt. I think that I have more notes than I usually have, for sure. You added so much value. I think the listeners are going to take so much from this, and I'm super grateful that you took the time out of your morning. I hope that coffee is kicked in, and I hope the rest of your day is badass, my friend.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Yeah, we'll be in touch, and look forward to... When does this episode going up? Is this episode happening... When does this episode go live?
So usually we have a bunch in the tank, so this will be a couple weeks down the road, but I will make sure that we create you a nice teaser clip like you've seen on both of our pages, and we'll send it your way if you want it. And we'll definitely... One of the things that we always say is when you sit down and talk with us, you become an ally in the cause, an ally in the journey, and we want to talk to you. We want to help you in any way possible, and we want to add value to you like you just did to us. So that's our goal.
Thanks, guys. Well, that's awesome. Thanks a lot again for having us, and look forward to staying in touch.
Absolutely, Matt. And I have 2 pages of full notes here. I can't wait to read your book. Thank you so much for coming on, and we will definitely be in touch.
Awesome. Thanks, boys.
All right, Matt. Have a good one. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so very much for listening to that episode featuring Matt Purcell all the way from Australia. We hope you guys enjoyed. Up next, we have a very special episode featuring Travis Chappell. He is the creator of the Build Your Network podcast. He has had so many next-level guests on his podcast, and he has a next-level mindset to back that up.
He had Lori Harder on, Chris Harder, Grant Cardone. I have 3 pages of notes, folks. Amazing questions. One of my favorite episodes for sure.
You guys will enjoy. Hang on here and listen to it next. Bye.
Talk to you soon.